Good morning, family. Thank you for joining me today. I am sitting in my backyard because I love being out here. I love doing my videos out here. But we do have it's going to be raining off and on all day today and all this week. And so I have an umbrella out here. If it comes a gully washer, I'll try to cover up my camera equipment with it and wrap this up pretty quickly. Today's topic is one that I get emailed about a lot. I've had a lot of emails, a lot of chats, a lot of messages about this over the years. It's something that I hear about regularly. And so I hope to address in this video, and then maybe in the future when people ask me about it, I can show them this video and that will be helpful for them. And that is what to do when your spouse, your significant other, whether it's your husband or your wife, are either not a believer or they're not walking out their faith as you are, or they're not wholehearted, Either way, the end result is you're in a marriage where you are in ways unequally yoked, and how to handle that. I need to also let you know that I am, it's a tremendous blessing in my life, but I am equally yoked. My husband and I, when we got married, we were both, at the time, I would say the world would consider us what would be casual Christians, or we were lukewarm. We showed up on Sundays. We were good people according to all definitions of the world. We were active in the church. We did good things. We lived good lives. Good as determined by the world's definition. Anyone who knew us would say, oh, they're such good people. They're good church-going people. They're good Christians. But we were very much lukewarm, and as we've learned reading the Bible, there's no such thing as a lukewarm Christian. It's in the Father's eyes, there's no such thing. And so we both became whole Bible believers at the same time. And I know that was the Father's will, that was the Father's hand, that was a tremendous blessing to us, and I know that was to prepare us for the purpose He had for us. And so we are very grateful for that. However, don't think that I'm without compassion or understanding to the fullest extent that I'm able of people in this situation where, honey, no. Sorry, I'm going to try to get the dogs to stop barking, so I'm doing this. But because I do have a lot of friends who are in this situation, a lot of wholehearted people who love the Father. They're married to good people, and they're just not in the same place spiritually. Some of them, I think some of them are just kind of not in the same place, but they're still somewhat supportive. Some of them are absolutely combative against it. And it is a difficult position to be in. And I know it's really hard on people in this position because they love the Father and they want to share this with their significant other, and they want to share this walk. They don't want to be a sojourner, so to speak, in their own household. And I know it's difficult. And so I want to talk about that today. I don't have, usually I map out what I'm going to talk about pretty well, but I didn't really do that today. I thought we'd just have a heart-to-heart instead about this. So hopefully I have a lot to say that I hope will encourage you. But we'll just pray that the Father leads me to say what needs to be said, and that it helps you to bear fruit in line with the Father's will for our lives. So, first of all, there's something that happens a lot. A beautiful pigeon just landed. Do y'all hear all the birds and stuff around here? Anyway, there's something that happens a lot in our world, in the world of believers. We often tend to focus on other people's sin instead of working on ourselves. This is a tragedy for many reasons. When we focus on other people's sin, we lose a lot of opportunity for our own spiritual growth. It also helps distract us from our own sin so that we don't work on that. And it pulls us further away from Him. It puts us more in a position of being a Pharisee, of judging others. instead of bringing us closer to Messiah. It's also indirect disobedience to Messiah. We were told, why are we worried about the splinter in our brother's eye when we've got a beam in our own? And in truth, Messiah taught us over and over, if we would focus on our own sin, and love and show compassion to others, that's what's going to lead them to Him. My friend Elisa, she and I are of the same heart in this, and she had a wonderful saying. She says, we're told to love our neighbor, and your spouse is your nearest neighbor. So one of the things that I try to always encourage people to do is we use the Bible as a mirror in which to see ourselves, not a magnifying glass in which to examine others. And so we need to focus on self first and loving others when it comes to them. I try to stay so focused on working on me. I don't have time to condemn you. I love you. I have time to love you, but I'm trying to work on this. And in doing so, I found in working on myself and in seeking to follow as closely as possible in the steps of Messiah, I end up shining His light and showing His example to others. And that attracts people. People want the peace you have. We can only have peace when we're following Him. And when we are following Him with our whole heart, He is going to bless us with a peace and an assurance in the midst of any storm. And that attracts people. That makes them want to know, what do you have that I don't have, and how do I get it? Who do you know? How do I know them too? That's a very important thing to keep in mind, is our witness. The way we walk out our walk is our greatest testimony. And I think of how many times the Father has had to show me grace, how much grace He's had to show me when I rejected Him, when I rejected His wisdom, like, when He says don't be unequally yoked, and you decide, I'm going to date this person anyway. When I reject His wisdom, I reject His teaching, I reject His commandments, and He has loved me through it anyway. I have spurned Him. I have turned against Him. I've actively worked against Him, and He still loved me. I was stubborn. I was thick-headed. I was ignorant. He still loved me. Just a minute. Let me put my dog up. Be right back. Okay. And in all of that, He remained steadfast. He loved me through it. So many things in our life help us to understand the Father better, help us to understand His love better. When you have a spouse who you desperately long to walk out their faith as you do, or at least be on the same page as you, and they reject it in whatever way, whether it be subtle or in broad strokes, this is another opportunity to understand how we make the Father feel. We can use this to grow closer to Him, to understand His love on a deeper level. And so that's the first thing I try to do. Another thing we want to keep in mind is, don't be so quick to condemn your spouse. We're all at different points in our walk. And how we walk our faith out is going to look different for each person. You know how much the Father loves you. You can't fully know, but you know how much He loves you. Knowing how much He loves you, you need to, and He's working on you. You need to also know that He loves your spouse too, and He's working on them as well. There's a great Bible verse for this. Okay, 1 Corinthians 7, 12 through 15. It's sprinkling of it. 1 Corinthians 7, 12 through 15. To the rest I say that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever, and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. If any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever, and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Do you hear that? He is working on you. One of the blessings that He wants us to have is that He's going to bless our household. When there's a wholehearted believer following the Father, He's going to bless your household. So we need to understand that don't necessarily, in most cases, it's not, no, I would say honestly in all cases, if you're living out your witness, if you're living out your testimony and you're following the Father, they're seeing the light of God in their home. They may still say they're an unbeliever, but if you're following in the Messiah's footsteps, they're seeing his light. They're seeing the reality of it. So just know that they're just at a different place in their spiritual growth than you are, and that's okay. We need to be patient. We need to be kind. We need to be compassionate. We need to serve them out of love. We don't need to beat them over the head with it. Everybody needs time to grow. And you know yourself, if you have a spouse who tends to be stubborn, stiff-necked, trying to press something, trying to force something is only going to cause them to dig in their heels more. Be gentle, be kind, be compassionate, go against your flesh. Treat them in a manner in line with the fruits of the Spirit in all things, and love them as the Father has loved you. He has loved you when you mouthed off to him, when you disobeyed him, when you did the opposite of what he wanted you to do, when you came back because then you finally needed something, and so you humbled yourself because you needed something, and then you went and turned around and did it again. He continued to love you. And so we really need to remember that with our spouses. Another thing that we need to keep in mind, don't be so quick to if they are not a believer at all, if they don't understand, they may be a believer, but they may just be at the very beginning of their walk. They may be kind of in the toddler stages of believing, and so they haven't really, they don't understand the covenant, and they haven't joined in covenant with the Father. We are in error when we hold people to and judge them by covenant standards, those who are not in covenant. We can't expect someone who is not in covenant with the Father to align their lives with covenant standards. Now, true, most of the covenant standards are just being a decent human being, or just part of being a decent human being. But don't judge those not in covenant by covenant standards. They don't know yet. You should be living by covenant standards. If you're not catching on yet, a big point of this video is not focusing on them, but focusing on us. Focusing on your witness, your behavior, how you walk out your walk. That is what's going to be the testimony. That is what the Father is going to use to soften their hearts and bring them around. We have to model the love of our Messiah. He loved the unloved. He loved people that were a whole lot harder to love than an unbelieving spouse who at one time you fell in love with. My hope is that you still love them now. Continue to fall in love with them. Continue to fall in love with them. Court them. Love them. I'm not saying go buy some book that tells you how to do it. I'm saying read the Bible, seek the Father, love them, serve them, care for them. As Jesus loves us, as Yeshua sacrificed so much for us, love your spouse. Fall in love with them again. Any negative feelings you have regarding their whatever stage they're at in terms of the faith, turn those into softer feelings. If you're mad at them for not getting it, if you're frustrated with them, change that to feeling compassion for them. Because you know what they're missing out on. You know the emptiness they must feel. You know the blessings that they don't even know exist because they haven't opened those gifts in their life yet. Don't try to force them on it. Don't try to force it on them, because that's not going to work. It's amazing how many people have spent years beating people upside the head with the Bible and have not stopped long enough to take notice and realize that it's not effective. I know a lot of people want to say, well, Messiah flipped tables. Well, Messiah was also crucified and died for all of us. You ain't Messiah. So soften towards them. turn your anger, turn your frustration, turn your resentment. Those are feelings of the flesh, okay? That's what the adversary wants you to feel, because that's going to drive a wedge between you and them, and that's going to prevent you from shining the light that's going to attract them to the Father, that's going to attract them to the faith that you have found. So turn all those into compassion and love. Soften your heart towards them. Do not let your heart be hardened. Allow the Father to soften your heart towards them. I want to read to you some Bible verses here that I feel are relevant to this. And we're going to just talk about these a little bit. 1 Peter 3:1, likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives. Now this goes for husbands too. Even if you're married to someone who does not believe and they do not obey, this is do not obey the word, they will be won over by how you obey the word, by how you walk it out. Now, how do we obey the word? What are the fruits of the Spirit? Love, patience, gentleness, kindness, self-control, steadfastness. These are fruits of the Spirit. If you're feeling anger, anxiety, frustration, these are fruits of the flesh. We've got to get in the Spirit. We've got to follow the Father wholeheartedly, and this means humbling ourselves. Matthew 7:16 through 20. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits. What fruit are you bearing? And I know this is hard. Listen, I'm stubborn. I'm very stubborn. I'm very stiff-necked. And sometimes it's hard getting past that hurdle and humbling yourself. But I will tell you, you will never, ever, ever go wrong by trusting in the Father and doing what He says. The Father calls us time and again to humble ourselves, to love one another, to love our neighbors. It may feel it is definitely counterculture. It may feel against any wisdom you may have. It's the Father's wisdom, so it's way better than your own. It exceeds your own in all cases. And the best way to understand the Father's wisdom is to apply it in our lives. There are so many things that the Father has led me to do. There are things that the Father has led me to say. There are things that the Father has clearly told me with His strong hand upon me, as that verse in Isaiah says, not to say. And I didn't understand it at the time, but I have seen the fruit. I have seen the fruit. That's what trust is. That's what faith is. Saying, Father, this doesn't make sense to me the way you're leading me right now, but I know you're leading me. And I know that it doesn't matter whether or not it makes sense to me. Whatever you say, that is truth. And I will follow you. And now we're going to move on to Romans 14:1 through 23. This is important. As for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over opinions. One person believes he may eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables. Let not the one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let not the one who abstains pass judgment on the one who eats, for God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It is before his own master that he stands or falls, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand. One person esteems one day as better than another, while another esteems all days alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. This is important. So let me tell you what's happening here, because a lot of people like to take this verse out of context and use it to say that Paul disobeyed God and did not follow the Father's commandments and all that stuff. People do some crazy things with this. Essentially, a lot of people even use this as part of a collection of verses where they set up Messiah. Now, I'm fixing to say something here. First of all, I need you to know that Messiah lived a sinless life. Okay? This is truth. Messiah lived a sinless life. He never contradicted the Father. He never sinned. But there was one situation in, I believe it's in Matthew, where they were walking in a field and he was picking some grain, and people say the Pharisees accused him of breaking the Sabbath. And so people who don't know the Bible, who've never read the whole Bible, who like to cherry pick, will use this to teach and justify and say, well, see, Messiah broke the Sabbath, so the Sabbath is no longer a thing because Messiah broke that commandment. When you say that Messiah broke a commandment, you're saying Messiah sinned, and he never did. So I have compassion on those people because I know, first of all, they don't know Scripture, they don't know the Father, because Malachi 3:6, and they don't know Messiah. And so that hurts my heart. My heart aches for them. If you knew those, you would know that the Father said, I am God, I do not change. You would know that the Sabbath is the fourth commandment, which we profess to follow the 10 commandments, but then we treat them like multiple choice in our modern world. And you would also know that Messiah never disobeyed the Father. Then you would lead to think, well, then why are they accusing him of this? Well, because the Pharisees had a law. They had additional laws. They had lots of additional laws, which they upheld as equal to, if not greater than, the commandments. And that's what Messiah did. He came to walk out the Father's law perfectly and in love, and to put all other rules in their place. So in this case as well, Paul is doing much the same thing. At this time, you have to understand that Gentiles were coming into the faith. They were being welcomed into the faith. The floodgates had been opened. They were coming in droves. So as a result, Gentiles, and this is in a city where there was a lot of gods being worshipped, lots of idols, lots of different temples to different gods and things. And so now you have this, what the Jews, and these Gentiles are joining themselves to the Jews, and they're starting to keep the Jewish Sabbath. They're starting to eat as the Jews eat, because the Jews were following God's commandments. And so they're starting to keep the one Sabbath. They're starting to abstain from certain things. They're starting to eat this, not eat the unclean foods and eat the clean foods. And then you've also got the Jews, who at the time with their additional laws, so all the Gentiles are like, what are you doing this for? Are you trying to become a Jew? Y'all have heard this. Some of y'all probably heard this in your real life. And then the Jews also have their additional laws that says you can't eat this if it was, if it was killed this way, if it was done this way. And they've added things to the word. And so Paul's like, you know what? Let's do what the word says. And don't let other people judge you. Don't worry about what other people say if you decide to keep the Sabbath. Don't worry about other people giving you a hard time for eating according to the Father's guidelines. And at the same time, don't worry about the people on this side giving you a hard time for sticking to what the Father says and not adding other laws and other rules to it. So he's telling us, don't argue over this stuff. You need to follow the word. You need to do what the Father says. Don't argue over this stuff with people. And I find one of the big missteps we make is if people have a member of their family who doesn't walk as they do. Have y'all ever sat down at the table with someone, or have y'all ever witnessed, let's do it that way, we're going to disassociate a little further. Have y'all ever witnessed a staunch vegetarian, of which I have no issue with whatsoever, have y'all ever wished a staunch vegetarian sit down with a staunch carnivore, and both of them were goading the other over their food choices? It gets nowhere, especially if it's not kind of good natured. If there is malice intended, it gets nowhere, and it goes south really fast. When I sit down with someone, y'all, those who know me for any period of time know that I eat biblically clean. Now, I used to not, because I didn't know better. Once I read the word, once you know better, you do the best you can, and once you know better, you do better. And so now I read the word, and I understand Father's instructions, And I'm grateful because I've seen the wisdom and the blessing. And so I want to do anything He tells me to do. If He has a commandment in there that I can possibly apply to myself, I want to do it. There's an estimated 613 commandments in the Bible. Most of them don't apply to me. A lot of them are just to the Levitical priesthood. And I'm not a Levitical priest. A lot of them apply to farmers. I'm not a farmer. A lot of them apply to people in situations in which you're living in the land, or if there is a temple. I don't live in Israel, and we don't have a temple right now. A lot of them apply to men. I'm not a man. And so out of the remaining laws of the Father, commandments that apply to me, every one of them that I can possibly apply to myself, I apply, because it has just proven to be blessing upon blessing, grace upon grace. He has kept me out of so much trouble. He has saved me from so much heartache. Oh my goodness, the blessings in my life from following His wisdom over my own. It's been amazing. But I sit down at the table with people on a regular basis, and I can sit at a restaurant with you and you order something that I don't eat, and I'm going to sit there and talk politely to you, and we're going to have a great conversation, and we're going to have a great fellowship. I'm not going to talk about what's on your plate. I'm not going to call out that you and I are eating differently and fully explain why. Now, if you ask me, I will answer you, but I will answer you with a soft and gentle answer. And I will give you the information you need. I will not pile additional on. I will answer your question as fully as you would like for me to. And then I'm going to continue to love you. And I'm going to continue to be kind and compassionate. If you don't say anything, I'm not going to say anything. The Bible says, be prepared to give answer when asked, for the reason of our hope. Give answer, that we are asked. I'm not going to sit down at a restaurant and start condemning everything on the menu and everything you're eating, because it's not kind and you don't know. And I'm not going to hold someone to covenant standards who is not in covenant with the Father. Instead, I'm going to encourage them. And if they are in covenant with the Father, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to encourage them to read the Word for themselves. Because I know that a truth discovered is better than a truth told. And the best way for you to hear the Father's words is from the Father's lips. I don't want to put myself in between you and the Father when He's speaking. That is akin to interrupting Him. If you are in the Word every day, and I'm just going to encourage you in the Word. And you know what? If you don't see what I see in the Word, I'm still not going to judge you, because it's not my place. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to continue to love and encourage you. And I know that this is something that a lot of people really struggle with. But this is the way the Father has instructed me, and I have seen clear wisdom in it. I love people where they are at, and I encourage them to grow closer to Him. We are going to walk out our faith differently. We are going to each struggle with different areas of obedience. If I see you struggling in an area, I'm not going to assume that because I recognize your struggle that I don't have struggles of my own. You may struggle in an area that comes easily for me. I may be struggling in an area you don't even see that comes easily for you. And so my job is not to point out individual sins in people, because I know that we're all struggling with something. The world is coming at us every day, and the world is trying to break us down and tear us apart. Let's encourage one another. Let's help one another stay strong. Let's lift one another up. And let's recognize that when we see someone stumbling or outright in error in something, when I see that, that causes me to go, they don't even know that, they may not even know that they're struggling in this area. What am I struggling with that I don't realize? Where am I falling down that I haven't even taken notice of? Father, help me in these areas, and then help me to encourage others to grow closer to you so that you can help them. We cannot make others see this. We cannot make others see what we see in the Word or in the Father or in Messiah. We cannot force someone to believe as we believe. We can love them where they are, and we can help lead them to Him. and He will reveal Himself to them. He is the only one who can drop the shingles from anybody's eyes. And so we need to also remember that most of the time, if we see someone who is not where we are, who may be a little behind us on the walk in one way, number one, we need to realize that we don't see what He sees. We have a limited vision. You know, that iceberg, you only see the tip of it, and below is where the big part of it is. But we need to realize that we were where they are 5 spiritual minutes ago. All have sinned and fall short. I strive after Him, but that doesn't mean I don't sin daily. And I don't judge people who sin differently from how I do. I look at them and I know that the Father loves them fiercely, just as He loves me. And so I want to please the Father, and I want to love them too, in hopes of being able to encourage them. 1 Corinthians 7:15 also says, "But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. Yahweh has called you to peace." If you have a spouse who does end the marriage, let it be so. Pray for them. You know, every case is different. Pray for them. But make sure that in your time with them, you act out of gentleness, love, and compassion. Don't judge them for being in a different place than you are. Know that the Father is working on them and that He loves them just as much as He loves you. And He loves them more than you do. And He wants to bless you with that. But you're going to have to line your life up with His will. You're going to have to walk in obedience to Him as best you can. Keep peace in your home. Don't try to stir up strife. I know one of the cases, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse about this, I need you to know that I love you wherever you are. My home, we keep Sabbath, and we eat biblically clean. I have a lot of brothers and sisters in Messiah who don't do these things. I don't love them any less. I know the Father doesn't love them any less. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here because I love you. And I want to choose my words carefully. I want to be soft with my answer. And you know, anytime somebody presses you on something, always pause. We need more pausing. Because when people pause, hopefully they're seeking the Father. And they're saying, "Father, tell me what you would have me say." I have a dear neighbor who passed away recently. Very dear to us. Very dear person to us. And they are wonderful people. And they love the Father. They went to, I'm speaking of the couple, they went to church their whole lives. They were active in the church. They don't eat like we do. They do a couple things differently. But I'm going to tell you something. They love the Father with their whole heart. And they do the best they can. They did the best they could with what they know. We all do the best we can with what we know. And I know that His name is written in the book of life. Try as we may, we are all sinners in some regard. We are all falling short. Work on your own self. And know that the Father's working on everyone else. But He needs us to take care of ourselves. He needs us to work on our own sin and to follow Him. And if we're really following Him, If we're really seeking to be obedient to Him, we're going to love those around us. And sometimes it's hard to do that. But you know what? We do the hard stuff because He's worthy. So you take that stubbornness and that stiff-neckedness that you have, because I know you have it. It's ingrained in us. It's part of our flesh. It's that flesh response. And that's usually what the adversary uses. It's what he hooks into first, and he leads us around by our flesh and by our stubbornness. So we got to take that and we got to give it over to the Father, because He'll lead us to love people. So what do you do when you have a spouse who is an unbeliever or who doesn't walk as you walk? You love them. It's starting to rain. My friend Amy always reminds me that when the Father sends rain in our time, it's a blessing. Rain on us, Father. Bless us with your presence. Bless us with your word. Help us to seek you. Help us to seek to grow closer to you every day. And help us to be so focused on you and so filled with your presence in our lives that when we look at people, we can't help but to love them and to want them to feel that same love from you. And so we're going to give it to them. We're going to be a source of your love to others. Love, compassion, forgiveness. Be ever mindful of the grace and mercy He has shown you and the forgiveness He has shown you. And let's show that to others too. Let's be steadfast. Let's not be moved by every blowing of the wind. Let's not be led by our emotions. I've been led by my emotions before. Christy has had her turn at the wheel. I don't trust myself. I trust in Him. I trust in the Holy Spirit to lead me. Try to be slow to offense. My goal is to be the most unoffendable person you know. I don't always achieve that. That don't mean I don't keep trying. And I recognize, because I have that goal set before me, I'm able to more easily recognize when I have kind of fallen off the wagon, and I get right back up with even more determination. I love y'all. I'm going to go in before it starts to downpour and all this gets soaked. Let's continue this conversation in the comments. If y'all have encouragement for one another, please offer encouragement. If you have further questions, I want to encourage you to seek the Father. Seek the Father. All too often, we turn to our neighbor first when we need to be turning to Him first. If we want Him to be our first line of defense, we've got to stop treating Him as a last resort. He's waiting. And I guarantee you, if you've got something that you need from Him, He's just been waiting for you to ask. But the trick is, when we ask for His leading and He tells us what to do, we got to be willing to do it. So go ahead and set your heart to do that now. I love y'all. I'm going to pray for you, and you pray for me, okay? Bye-bye.